Hi, everyone. I'm Aliza Sherman, and I'm the CEO of Ellementa. I want to thank Erica for helping us with this webinar. Behind the scenes, we've got Melissa. Thanks, Melissa. Melissa Pierce is one of my business partners. And on social media, we have Ashley Kingsley, another one of my business partners. And also our special guest, who is Nikki Fuhrer, the author of A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
So what we wanted to do first is just show, hello, we are real and human. You're human, right?
Kind of, a little bit.
For the moment.
One.
And exactly. So then what we're going to do now is bring up some of our slides so we can dig into the program. Hi there,
This is
puppy.
Henry. He's
Hi,
my
Henry.
dog.
So I'm going to be turning off my video, and Nikki will be turning off her video now, and we're going to move into the slide portion of our program. I wanted to start with our goals. Our goals today are to empower you with better information about cannabis, specifically focused on health and wellness. And we wanted to introduce you to the Ellementa Women's Wellness community. Of course, we want to tell you more about Nikki's book, A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. But first, I want to make sure you stick around. At the end of this webinar, we are going to be giving away a copy of Nikki's book, and we're also going to be giving away some CBD tea, Women's Formula CBD Herbal Tea Blend from Giovanna at giovanna.com. Thank you, Giovanna, for the tea. Thank you, Workman Publishing, for the copy of Nikki's book. So stay tuned for the end of this webinar to hear who wins the book and the tea. Now I want to tell you just briefly a little bit about Ellementa. Here are some of the things that we do for you. The first is that we hold gatherings. Our gatherings are intimate events. We call them women's wellness circles, where you can meet experts and brands, representatives from quality brands who are looking to educate you about cannabis and CBD for health and wellness. So if you're looking to get your questions answered, if you're looking to meet other women like you searching for health and wellness information regarding cannabis and CBD, our gatherings are the place to go. We are really careful about the products we recommend and the brands that we work with. The products we recommend are things that some of us have actually tried, so we make sure we vet those products carefully. And then we bring the brands to you, either through email or at our gatherings, online in some way, so you are aware of the products that are quality, high quality, and also how to use them. I think that's a really big thing for women, is they might see a product but aren't even sure how to use them. And the other thing that we do at Ellementa is we develop content specifically geared toward women. So really relevant content for women's lives and how cannabis and CBD can fit into your life, into your self-care routine, into your caregiving for others. So that's one of the things that we feel like this webinar is so helpful to bring this kind of information directly to women. So that's a little bit about us and what Ellementa does. Now we're going to run a poll, and we'll be able to see the results live so we can find out a little bit more about you. So here's the poll, and we're just trying to find out what is important to you regarding cannabis and why you're using it. There you go. And there are the results. So now let's get into the main part of our webinar. This webinar is based around the book, A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. Feel better, look better, sleep better, and relieve your anxiety, lift your depression, melt stress. These are all things that this book has within its pages. I think what's really neat about the book is it feels like a girlfriend having a conversation with you. Nikki, the author, has gotten into some really personal stories about her own experience with cannabis. I want to mention before I have Nikki tell a little more about herself, that she is the Ellementa St. Louis leader. So she is responsible for bringing women together in the St. Louis area to talk about cannabis and CBD. So welcome, Nikki. We're really happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about your background, because you have a pretty diverse background. What is your background and what inspired you to write this book?
My background is in two things. It's in publishing and cannabis. So the book sort of came from that. Before I worked in the cannabis industry, I owned an independent bookstore. And then once I started growing plants and making products and working in dispensaries, I realized that we need this book. We need this book for everyone who is new to cannabis to sort of learn the basics.
Well, I totally agree with you that there's so little information out there, either going back to the basics in a way that's easy to understand for someone who's not a scientist, not a botanist, not a professional in the industry. And then also, as I was saying about Ellementa, it's content that is more specific to women's needs, women's health needs. So I want to talk about specific pieces in your book, but first, let's go into information about the endocannabinoid system, because we're going to introduce a lot of terms as we're talking about your book. But I wanted to first talk a little bit about our ECS, our endocannabinoid system. So the way I usually explain to people who have never heard of the endocannabinoid system is that it's a system within our body that lays over all the other systems. So it lays over our digestive system, circulatory, respiratory, reproductive, our nervous system, our organs, our brain. It's throughout our entire body. And why haven't we heard about this system before? Well, it wasn't even discovered until the late 80s and early 90s. And what scientists discovered is that chemical compounds within the cannabis plant called phytocannabinoids, and phytocannabinoids, or chemicals like phytocannabinoids, or cannabinoids for short, are contained in many different plants. They interact with natural cannabinoids within our bodies. So we have these natural cannabinoids. One of them that is better known and better researched is called anandamide, which is our bliss molecule. So cannabinoids, these chemical compounds in cannabis, react really well with these chemical compounds in our body. And we also have these receptors, which are part of the endocannabinoid system. CB1 and CB2 are the better known receptors in our bodies. The cannabinoids in the cannabis plant can bind to these receptors, and CB1 is throughout our body, particularly our brain and nervous system. CB2 is mostly in our immune system. And the only cannabinoid, so when I say cannabinoid, the one you're most familiar with is probably THC. That is a cannabinoid, the chemical compound, and it affects our brain. So it attaches to the CB1 receptor. CBD is probably the most popular cannabinoid now, especially for people who aren't looking to get high. And that one is the only one that doesn't actually bind to a receptor, but it really affects all the other cannabinoids. So basically, we've got a system in our body that responds naturally and really well to chemical compounds in the cannabis plant. And that's why cannabis works for us. That's kind of my spiel about the endocannabinoid system. It's a lot more complex. Nikki, do you have anything to add that I left out that people should know about their endocannabinoid system, the ECS?
No, that was a really good coverage of it. But we should take as good of care of our endocannabinoid system as we do with our immune system.
I agree. And if we take care of our endocannabinoid system, it actually boosts our immune system. And in fact, I was talking to Sherry Mateo, who is the Ellementa Marin leader. She's actually at this moment live in Marin leading her gathering. She couldn't be here today, but she's a certified nurse midwife. She has a lot of good healthcare background. And she was saying that in our stressful world, especially right now, things are so incredibly stressful. It is really hurting and harming our endocannabinoid system, and that cannabis or CBD or a combination thereof can really nourish our ECS and bring us more into balance, a homeostasis. And we could all benefit from that in some way. So let's dig into your book now, Nikki. You break your book down into several different parts. And what I did is I pulled out some of the key ways that cannabis can help us health-wise. And the first thing really applies because so many people who took the survey, especially, and so many women I speak with, talk about pain. They're in pain. It's either the wear and tear of just age, it's from activities and sports, it's from surgery, it's from arthritis, like me, from repetitive stress, working on the computer too much. So cannabis can be an analgesic. Nikki, you write a lot about your experiences in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how you've been using, and you've used in the past, cannabis specifically for pain?
Absolutely. I have fractured my spine. I fractured my L1 vertebrae a few years ago. And that just set off a tidal wave of back problems. And so now I have sciatica and I have back pain and I have the regular menstrual cramps, and I'm 44 and things are starting to hurt kind of pain. Absolutely. I have fractured my spine. I fractured my.
Oh, you know what? You may be, are you listening to?
I know. Should I mute that?
You should have, just make sure you just have no other windows open. I think that's an echo back from Facebook Live, possibly. But don't mute, or else I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. That wasn't it.
Okay. Are you you're on a headset, right?
No, I don't have a headset.
Okay. Well, I think let's try it again. I think it should work.
But yeah, it wasn't really until I fractured my spine when I went, oh, okay, this is serious pain. And I really developed an appreciation for combining THC and CBD together. And those one-to-one strains where I had a little bit of both really took care of the back pain more than anything else I'd ever tried. And I just sort of fell in love with the relief I was getting from that. And when you combine THC and CBD with, all of the other cannabinoids and terpenes, and you get that whole effect, it's anti-inflammatory and pain relief together. And that, I think, is the reason possibly the arthritis has waited until 2019 to appear in my hands. I felt it creeping on for a while, but I think just having a daily dose of THC and CBD has really kept it at bay.
That's incredible. And I think you mentioned something which is a point to really drive home, is that it's the combination of the cannabinoids in cannabis that makes it most effective. So you said combining THC with CBD. THC can kind of block some of that pain receptor reaction and really be a pain reliever and an analgesic, as it says here. CBD does that anti-inflammatory, so the combination is incredibly powerful. You might be getting a product that has an isolated version of CBD. There's a lot of school of thought out there in terms of what is the most effective. It really depends on you, the individual, but there are people who say that isolating just one of the cannabinoids will not be as effective as having all the cannabinoids combined to interact with each other. So when you're looking for products that have an analgesic quality, you usually want to look for whole plant or something with some THC in it. Now, that's not possible everywhere you live to obtain something like that, but just understanding things will work more effectively when you have more of the natural contents within the cannabis you're consuming. And also, how did you say you were taking it in? How were you consuming it, Nikki?
I do it different ways. It just sort of depends. My standard, I go to the dispensary and get syringes of CO2 oil.
And when you say syringe, you're not saying needle syringe. You're talking about a needleless that you would take that orally. Right. Okay, just when I hear syringe, sometimes I'm like, needle? No needle.
Oh, yeah. This is just like an oral syringe that you squirt cold medicine into kids' mouths.
Exactly.
And then CO2 oil is a concentrate, and it's just such a gooey, sticky concentrate that putting it in the syringe is the neatest way to take it. And I just squeeze out a drop or two, and a drop or two has 10 to 15 milligrams of THC and 10 to 15 milligrams of CBD. I do that in the morning. I do that at night, and I'm good to go. Sometimes I go to the dispensary and they have one of my favorite 1-to-1 flower strains, so I buy that and smoke it. I don't find that that's as effective for me. I don't feel as good as when I take the oil, but sometimes I just, like the flower. So, and I have been getting more into the topicals with my hands. And I took some flower that I didn't like smoking, and I infused it into some coconut oil, and I rubbed that into my hands when my joints are just feeling stiff and sore. And it really has been a help.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out, and as we get into the other ways that cannabis can help ease sleep disorders and other things, there are so many different ways to consume it now. And for the states that have gone legal already and are manufacturing products, companies are just coming up with all sorts of different ways to consume. So if you're just used to a pill, capsule, tablet, they now have that with either THC or a combination, CBD only. They've got powders. They have breath strips, like literally dissolvable strips that you place on your tongue. They have sublingual sprays. They have nasal mists. So many other options for bringing this medicine into your body, not just smoking or vaping or doing any of the other things that you are used to seeing or thinking about. So having options, I think, is really great. And each one of these forms of consumption will affect you differently. And some will take longer to affect. An edible will take much longer than a nasal spray, for example. And then some of them will last longer than others. So keeping that in mind, one thing that you think might be good for pain, it might be something else. So if you have immediate acute pain, it could be vape or a tincture under the tongue or something that you can absorb orally in your mouth, the mucous membranes in your mouth and your sublingual glands under your tongue. But if you just want something to last longer, that edible will come on slowly, but it'll eventually feel better for longer periods of time. Let's talk about sedatives and sleep. Sleep is a huge issue for women, particularly as our hormones go up and down. Talk to us a little bit about sleep, Nikki, and how cannabis can be helpful for sleep issues.
Sleep is one of the main reasons a lot of people come to the dispensary. And sleep, as long as we stay away from the sativa counter, we should be okay. What we're really looking for are two things. We want a high CBN content in that strain. And that I know in Illinois, we've got a few strains that have high CBN, and I've seen CBN capsules at the dispensary where they've put oil in that is a little bit higher in CBN. You really don't need a lot for sleep. Maybe 5 milligrams is enough to sort of get you to that state. And the other thing we're looking for are terpenes that sort of will put us to sleep. And those are the indica terpenes, the ones that smell a little earthy, that smell a little hoppy, that we've got that lavender smell in there. Those are the terpenes we're looking for that will sort of put us to sleep rather than keep us up.
So to kind of clarify a few of the things that you said, I'm going to play definition girl.
Oh,
You had
sure.
mentioned stay away from the sativa counter. For those who aren't familiar, there are two the main strains, species actually, species of the cannabis plant, the sativa and the indica plant. And the sativa plant tends to be a lot more stimulating. So that byproducts of that sativa plant will be great for productivity, creativity, but not necessarily great for sleep. And the indica plant produces flower and byproducts that will be much better for sleep. The difference is the sativa would give you more of a head high and a kind of a buzzy head high, and the indica will give you more of a very deep, relaxed body high. And the term couch locked comes up a lot with indica, like you want to sink into the couch and just relax. So you also mentioned CBN, 5 milligrams of CBN is a good amount. CBN being a cannabinoid, and that is one that is definitely a sedative, but too much CBN can lead to that paranoid feeling that you sometimes get if you have not so good cannabis. And when you mentioned terpenes, there's 3 key terpenes, 2 actually that I knew of, and I think one of them you mentioned to me the other day. Myrcene is definitely very good for sleep. Linalool, which is also in the lavender plant. Linalool, and that's what gives some strains an almost lavendery smell. And wasn't it humulene that you had said was also good for that? Because that you said hoppy, and I know hops and humulene.
The thing that we love humulene for, honestly, the most is an appetite suppressant. But it is also, yes.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about that later. Not to confuse everybody at the moment. But you mentioned hoppy, and I know that hops have the terpene humulene as well. So we'll mention that in a moment because we're going to get to the appetite suppressant topic in just a second.
And that I do want to say, somebody did leave a comment, and that's important to notice. For me, the strains that smell sort of hoppy are a good sedative for me. I know those put me to sleep. Edibles knock me out like nobody's business. And somebody made a comment. Some people respond to sativas, and those put them to sleep. It really is your own body. If you go out and try an indica and you're not sleeping, it's not you and that strain. You're just not a good match. Try a different one, and try a hybrid and see that. What works for some may not work for all. I don't want people to think that there's something wrong with them if what we're saying does not work for them.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad the person made that comment because actually any cannabis puts me to sleep, including sativas. And also the other thing to note is people with ADHD, it tends to be the opposite. So a sativa would be more like an indica for them. So if you have certain kinds of brain conditions or disorders, or it sometimes will be the absolute opposite. So I love the fact that you made that point. It's very individual. Mood lifter. This is a really good one for women, particularly as we have these intense hormone fluctuations. Even when we have our periods, the mood swings can be very dramatic. And a lot of us, I don't know about you, but a lot of us also have depression. And what I have to say before we start delving into how cannabis can be a mood lifter, I really want to say that we're not telling you to stop any medication if you're on medication. If you are on medication, be very careful what you take, because there are some things in cannabis that can be counteract some of the medication you're taking. It would be really helpful if you speak to a doctor. I know some of you are in states where that's very hard to do, but there are doctors online in states where it is legal who you could be in touch with and get some information. There's a lot of good information out there as well, but also confusing. So let's just be really careful and mindful. We're not telling you stop medication. We're just letting you know what some women, including ourselves, have experienced. Nikki, talk to us about cannabis as a mood lifter.
Cannabis as a mood lifter is probably one of my favorite reasons for using cannabis. I was not aware until I started using 1-to-1 strains, how depressed I was until it lifted. I didn't realize how much anxiety could drive my decision making until I got it to calm down. And that my favorite study that they've done with cannabis is that they determined basically anything over about 12 milligrams of THC in a dose will increase anxiety. But if we stay below that 12 milligrams of THC, and most doses are at 10, so if we stay at that 10 milligram dose of THC, we're reducing our anxiety. And if we add the 10 milligrams of THC to 10 milligrams of CBD, we're reducing the anxiety, we're calming our brains down, we're breathing better, our blood pressure is going down, our muscles are relaxing, and we function better when we're in that kind of state. So honestly, that's probably, in addition to pain relief, also super important, but that mood boost is probably my favorite thing about cannabis.
Well, so far, the three things that we've talked about, the analgesic pain relief, the sleep aid, and now the mood lifter, I think they all work together to bring us to a more balanced place, to bring that super intensity of stress down a couple of notches or a bunch of notches so that we can deal with the stressors in our lives. And something you mentioned about 10 milligrams or under 12, you're talking about microdosing. And that is really a technique for consuming cannabis where you're not necessarily going for that high euphoric feeling. You're going for that more even keel, bringing it down those notches type of feeling. You want to function, you want to be able to think during the day. Well, if you take lower doses, and you need to find what your dose is, because I got to tell you, 10 milligrams would knock me out. There's just no possible way. In fact, I just tried 5 milligrams recently, and it really knocked me out. And so it depends on what you're looking for, but I really think 2.5 is much more my speed. So very individual. Microdosing can introduce the cannabinoids, the terpenes, and the different parts of the plant that can be healing, can be soothing, relaxing, or lift that mood without you feeling like, oh, I'm too high, I can't function. Mm-hmm. So microdosing, I think, is a very interesting technique for consuming cannabis. Let's talk a little bit about the appetite suppressant piece of it, which is so kind of weirdly counterintuitive, because as far as I knew before I learned about the chemistry of cannabis, it gave you the munchies. Mm-hmm. It made food taste amazing, and you would snack, and I would go for super savory things and salty things, and it was fabulous. But it was also, that's where you gain some weight from it, and it's not as healthy. And so that's sort of that stereotype that's stuck in my brain. So it was really amazing to learn about this. How is cannabis an appetite suppressant?
There are a couple of compounds in cannabis that, there are several compounds in cannabis that regulate the appetite. THC and CBD are both of those. The thing is, THC tends to, give us the munchies, increase appetite, even though studies have been shown that marijuana users, cannabis users, tend to be on the healthier side, lower BMIs, lower waist ratios. I don't know, I know it's a waist measurement, but they tend to be thinner than the rest of the population. Part of that is because that people who use cannabis are also tend to be active people that exercise a lot and eat healthy anyway. So that some of that is self-selected, but for the rest of us that are not climbing mountains all the time, it really can sort of help us keep our appetite in check if we are using cannabis that's high in CBD, high in humulene, and high in THCV. And eventually, we split out CBD and make it an isolate. Somebody is going to split out that THCV and make an isolate. And that is probably going to be the most powerful weight loss weapon we have.
This is I always learn something new. Thank you. So moving on to skincare, I know that CBD is now being put into everything, not just lotions, creams, and ointments, and soaps, and bath bombs, shampoos, conditioners. I've seen toothpaste, but even cosmetic products. Does it really work? I know you've got an opinion about CBD for skin versus THC and CBD. What would you say that people should look out for when they're thinking of getting topicals, for example?
Here's the thing, topicals, whether we're using them for pain or we're using them to look better, are really super effective. And the thing with topicals is that all of the cannabinoids work for that. So whether there's THC in it, whether there's CBD, whether there's THCA and CBDA, you want those in skincare products too. All of them work to make our skin better and improve skin conditions, acne, psoriasis, eczema, all kinds of skin issues that people have got all over.
Yeah, so I think one thing to note when we're talking about something that you apply to the surface of your skin, a topical typically is something that can address things on that surface. It doesn't sink very deeply. So whether it has CBD or CBD with THC, it will, like you say, address that surface skin irritations and eruptions. And it's helpful in that way. It's also helpful for very specific, maybe joint pain or muscle pain, but things that are a little bit closer to the surface. It's not sinking in deeply. But with certain additives, it can become a transdermal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not just a transdermal patch, but it could be a transdermal cream where it has maybe oleic acid. Emu oil is a great, they call it like an accelerant that can help with absorption. Certain terpenes like limonene are also helping with absorption to go more deeply into your system. A topical typically doesn't break the blood-brain barrier, so it doesn't get you high. Like if you had a THC, like I've used a THC neck cream for the arthritis in my neck, it doesn't get you high, but it certainly does relax you. But if it is transdermal, it will really sink in and can relax you. Again, you don't get high off of the topical. It's not sort of reaching you in the same way and getting into your system the same way, but you can get a deep relaxation from it, as you can with a bath bomb, for example. It's very relaxing. So I have think one more here before we open it up to questions. And I know I see, 100 and something questions and comments. I actually cannot see the questions. So I know that Melissa's going to be feeding us the questions in a little while. She's sorting through them and finding the ones that she knows that we can definitely answer tonight. We'll also take some questions we cannot answer tonight and answer them in a blog post later. So we'll share that with everybody as well. So some things do require a lot more research. So the last topic we're going to cover from your book, A Woman's Guide to Cannabis, is cannabis as an antioxidant and also for anti-aging. This was something new that I learned from your book, was that there are things in cannabis that can help reduce the plaque that builds up in your brain that could cause dementia. Now, dementia does run in my family, and that is a really scary thing. We're not saying this is going to stop it, but there have been studies out there that are showing that it can be helpful. We do know that cannabis is very rich in antioxidants. I mean, even if you juice raw leaves, which doesn't get you high, you can get a lot of vitamins, minerals, and omegas, a lot of things that are very good for your body and your brain. But talk a little bit for a moment, Nikki, and then we're going to move into taking some questions. But talk about how cannabis can be an antioxidant and great for anti-aging.
And my favorite statistic sort of number thing about cannabis is that the number of the baby boomers who used cannabis in the 60s are not getting diagnosed today at the rate they should be with Alzheimer's. Their cannabis use decades ago was preventative, and it sort of prevented that plaque from building up in the brain. And that is where they know that the Alzheimer's is coming from. So the longer we can keep that plaque from building up, the better. And as much as we talk about how cannabis is not great for teenage brains, developing brains, adolescent brains, cannabis is amazing for old brains. And that even just the small break when you are high from THC, your short-term memory is sort of taking a little break. It is shut down. You're not going to remember anything. And we want that, because then when the high is over and the THC is sort of settled down and we've come back to ourselves, our memories and our muscle retention in our brain, our memory retention in our brain is stronger than it was before. So that, and we've seen amazing results with cannabis oil in nursing homes for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. It's just unbelievable.
I want to also mention, because you were just talking about that memory thing, it is also helpful for PTSD. So,
Absolutely.
and yeah, because it's that memory thing too. So someone who keeps reliving over and over a trauma and they cannot get rid of those memories, there's an aspect of cannabis that can really help them with that. So whether it's a vet who has experienced some serious trauma out in wartime, war zone, whether it's somebody who's been held up at gunpoint, I'm raising my hand because it happened to me in the 90s, and there is still residual. Anybody who's been assaulted in any way, again, we're not saying this is the cure-all, but cannabis has been found to help with things like PTSD and the trauma and recovery from trauma. So it is a pretty amazing plant.
And I do want to say, since we're all women here, that PTSD from sexual assault is the largest category of people with PTSD. And that the marijuana can be especially helpful in sort of relieving the trauma of sexual assault.
Wow. Really powerful. This is the time now that we're going to turn it over to all of you. I know Melissa has been working really hard at getting all those questions sorted, and we're here to start answering questions. Are you there, Melissa? Let's see.
I am here. Can I just? Yes?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. So the questions that we have is CBD available in states that don't have legal cannabis yet?
So I'll answer that a little bit, Nikki, and then if you have anything to add, because the answer to this question is actually a pretty new answer. So there are, oh boy, now I'm forgetting how many states, 10, 11, 12 states now that have legalized cannabis itself for either for recreational or adult use. Then there's other states that have legalized cannabis for medicinal use. And then there are states that had allowed CBD. But the farm bill that's just come out that is allowing now us to legally grow industrial hemp is going to, we think, allow all states to have legal CBD derived from industrial hemp plants. So just a quick lesson on that. The CBD we're seeing out there is supposed to be derived from industrial hemp. It will now be legal across the United States, we believe, to grow this plant. And it is cannabis sativa. It just happens to be a lower resin version of the cannabis plant. And the CBD products that you're buying have trace amounts or absolutely no THC. So we can't say blanket, yes, CBD is available everywhere. You do need to do your local research. But with this farm bill, it seems like it will be more readily available. Anything to add on that, Nikki? Is that, did I cover some of the things? It's so complicated.
It is very, very complicated and very delicate. If you can, get your THC and CBD from cannabis. Go to a dispensary if that is available to you. Be careful with hemp CBD products. They're not, there's no regulation. No one has checked them for safety. Some of them are definitely better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that everyone has to be careful of in terms of making sure, first of all, you're obtaining whatever you're obtaining legally. Second of all, make sure you know what it is and where it comes from. And you're right, cannabis that's regulated now, you get test results. You don't get test results for CBD that's not regulated.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, if there are no test results, do not put it in your body. I will say that.
Well, that is unfortunately, that's really hard for a lot of people though. But I mean, if you think about it, we go down the grocery aisle, we read a label, but we put things in our body that we don't really know. It is hard. We all try to be as healthy as we can. I just got a text from Melissa with a ton of questions, so I guess I'm going to be asking these.
Okay.
People are talking about hybrids and wondering about how to do telemedicine. Oh, there's a lot of questions here, Melissa. Telemedicine, I'll tell you, there are a couple of companies out there that are doing telemedicine right now. I know Hello MD has been doing it for a couple of years now. I believe they're still offering that, but there are doctors out there who will do consults through the internet, by phone. It's tough. I don't know if I can even recommend things like that, but so many people don't have an option otherwise. People are talking about hybrids. So we talked about indica and sativa.
Mm-hmm.
A hybrid is a blend of both, but I've heard, and tell me if this is right or wrong according to your knowledge, Nikki, that in general, when we say a sativa plant or this is sativa, this is indica, what we're really saying it's sativa dominant or indica dominant, because there's been so much crossbreeding, it's hard to find pure sativa versus indica, but definitely dominant. Is that correct?
Absolutely. At this point, every strain out there is a hybrid. Every strain out, technically, this is what genetic modification is. Every strain is a GMO because we have taken two strains and set them. You take a boy plant and a girl plant and you leave them alone and they will make a new strain. And then that is a GMO, and it's got a whole new set of terpenes and a whole new set ratio of THC and CBD. And in the cultivation, when we are growing new strains, we did that on purpose. We took a bunch of boy plants and a bunch of girl plants and made new plants so that we could find new strains with, a little bit of THC and a lot of CBD, or a lot of THC and a little bit of CBD. We were looking for different ratios. So all of those are hybrids. We get test results back from the lab telling us these are the terpenes in this plant. And we go, okay, we already have 6 plants like that. We'll toss that one. And eventually we come to one that gave us terpenes we had never seen before and ratios we had never seen before. And we went, okay, this is good medicine. We'll keep this plant. And then we cut little baby plants from that plant. And all of those plants will then have the same potency and the same terpenes and the same test results. They will have the same effect. So when cultivators make new strains, that's all they're doing is putting a boy plant and a girl plant together, creating a baby plant that they think is interesting or does something well, and they make more of it. So as the years go by, hopefully we can make more specialized strains and say this strain is higher in CBG, this strain is higher in humulene, and sort of bring out those other cannabinoids and terpenes, just like we brought out the THC on the black market.
And that's what's happening now with CBD as well, though. So all the other cannabinoids were sort of suppressed, and THC was really pumped in to the plants that they were doing in the 80s in particular. And as states have been legalizing and people are more discerning and everyone's saying, I want CBD, they've been really trying to up CBD content. We've got a lot of little questions here that I think we can just bang out really quickly, how
Yeah.
exactly does THC and coconut oil help you suppress your appetite? I think that was something you had said, where you take your THC in coconut oil and it's THCV that affects you. It's not the coconut oil that does, it's the
Yeah, no, for me, it's the CBD. It's not the THC for me. And for me, it's the CBD that is really the appetite suppressant. I either take a 1-to-1 oil that's got THC and CBD, or just a lot of CBD and a little bit of THC, and or if you find THCV, and if you find that strain, let me know. I'm looking for it.
Well, so coconut oil is just the carrier oil. It's not that this, okay. Somebody asked how to make cannabis lube. I think that's a whole other session.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy. Cook some cannabis flower. Anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. Go get some cannabis flower, cook it into some coconut oil, just like you would cook it into butter. Put it on the stove for an hour in a jar, let it sort of sit and heat for a while, strain the flour out. And then the important step is you want to add a little flavoring. And my new favorite thing is to combine a couple of drops of chocolate and a couple of drops of vanilla, and it makes this nice little flavor, and that is your lube. Don't use that with condoms. That's your condom-free lube. If you want a water-based lube, you have to make it with cornstarch, and the recipe is in the book.
The recipe's in the book, right on. Well, I just learned something new again.
And the coconut and the lube can be used as a massage oil too.
That's awesome. That sounds like it's going to smell and taste really great.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say flower. I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're actually talking about the flower from the plant, the bud of cannabis.
Yes.
For a moment there, when you were talking cooking, I was like, oh, they make flour? FLR? I wonder if it's gluten-free. Okay, here's another question. Can you put CBD or THC in a capsule without preservatives?
Yes, it can go into a capsule just on its own. When producers are putting things in the capsule, it's to extend the expiration date. That's why they're doing that. And that if you buy the capsule over the counter at the dispensary, just check the ingredient label to see what they've put. They might have put a carrier oil in the capsule, but it might just be a little bit of coconut oil. It should just be a little bit of coconut oil, or something else, just to keep the oil stable in the capsule.
Got it. Here's another. This is a good one. I know you know the answer. How do you keep your tolerance low, or how do you reset it?
Here's the thing, that yes, maintaining your tolerance is important if you want to keep your doses low. And that just means taking a break. You have to go a few days without smoking, without your edibles, without whatever you're using, and just let your system sort of reset itself. Just like you sort of have to up your dose with any medicine after a while. If you just cut back on it, then your tolerance will also cut back.
Excellent. And somebody was asking a microdosing question, which I think I can answer. 2.5, 5 milligrams, how much? You know what? A microdose is very individual to each person. So when Nikki was saying 12 milligrams or less, actually some people, they feel their microdose, because of their high tolerance level, is even higher than that, 15 milligrams. But the idea is that it's not going to give you that high as much. It's really not about the high. So some women I know, it's 1.5, it's even less than 2.5 milligrams. So it's one of those things, Nikki, you had told me the other day, start low, go slow. Start much lower than even an instruction might be for you. So if somebody says, oh, start with 5 milligrams, if you have never taken it before, cut that in half, or even half of that, and just incrementally increase. And don't incrementally increase that same day, because that's the mistake a lot of people make, is like, oh, I'll take 5 milligrams. Oh, I feel nothing. 5 minutes later, I'll take another 5. Well, now you've got 10, and then you take another 5, and that's going to be too much. So microdosing isn't about taking a little bit right away. It's figuring that out. And then some people will take 2.5 in the morning, 2.5 in the evening, and then that's good for them as well. So it's hard to say. Treating skin conditions like psoriasis. Yes, absolutely. I've heard so many people saying that CBD and THC creams, ointments, salves are incredibly effective on eczema, psoriasis, acne. Do you agree? Is that what you've been hearing as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I made my own little under eye cream because my wrinkles were getting out of control, and my forehead wrinkles are now etched in there permanently. So I'm trying to work on those. But yeah, I can definitely tell a difference in the eye area, the forehead, not so much. Those are pretty permanent. But yeah, the little lines definitely are easing away.
And somebody just asked, what does transdermal mean? We were talking about that in topicals. Transdermal goes through the layers, underneath the layers of the skin, through your dermis, your epidermis, your skin. So transdermal, beneath the skin. And again, in order for a topical to go beneath the surface of the skin, it just needs an additional chemical of some kind to push it through. Or there's something called nanotechnology you might be hearing a lot about, where they say they're reducing the molecules of the CBD and it's supposed to go and penetrate more. That's a conversation for another time. The difference between CBD from hemp as opposed to cannabis, it's a little bit complicated, but the biggest thing to know is the plant that is being grown for our consumption. You can grow CBD high strains and extract CBD from those plants. But technically speaking, that in some places it's a gray area, but technically speaking, that's cannabis and a cannabis extract. And industrial hemp, the sort of sister plant, if you will, with the lower resin, that is what is legal in some, but not all states right now. And that's what we think is going to be legal in all states, depending on what happens with this farm bill. So I think we are getting to our time. I want to pick our winner. And I do have a winner's name. And we randomly drew, by the way. So we pulled out everybody's email who registered, and we randomly drew winner number 56. And it looks like it's Jean Ann Lang, I believe. And we have your contact information, so hopefully you're listening in, and we'll be able to get your prize to you. Again, it is A Woman's Guide to Cannabis, the actual book, and Women's Formula CBD Herbal Tea. All of you get a free ebook from us, something that we've been working on, trying to get done for so long. And this webinar motivated us. 10 things you always wanted to know about cannabis, but were afraid to ask. So look for that. After this webinar, you will receive a link. Everyone who has registered will receive a link. And you will also get a link literally as soon as we stop this webinar to our survey, our 2019 survey. So we hope you will participate in that. How can you stay in touch with us? We have groups online. They are closed Facebook groups, and they're by state. If you don't see your state on this list, elementa.com/groups, just email us through our website and ask if we can get one set up for you. And you can attend gatherings, elementa.com/gatherings, face-to-face, warm, welcoming, safe spaces where women can open up, connect with experts. We bring in female scientists and doctors and bud tenders. It's a really great exchange of information. It's not like any kind of lecture or workshop you've been to. It's a women's wellness circle. And of course, on social media, at Ellementa Woman on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Nikki, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. How can women find you?
The book is available anywhere books are sold. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. It is at your independent bookstores. And that is a former independent bookseller. I would encourage you to shop local. But if you don't have a bookstore, go ahead and find Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Oh, excellent. And you are on Twitter, on Facebook?
Yes, I'm on all the social media. I'm not great at it, but yes, Get High Like a Lady is on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Oh, and I forgot about Pinterest. I used to do all this for the bookstore and then took a break and was so pleased with social media. I haven't quite gotten back into the swing of it.
Well, listen, let me tell you, thanks again. I want everyone to know February 20th, we're doing another webinar. This time the topic is cannabis and women's sexual health. We will also send you a link to that. You just click and you can register in advance. And we will be talking with a sex expert who knows a lot about how cannabis can help you with all kinds of sexual issues and not even issues, just how to enjoy sex more with a little bit of cannabis. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I hope you got some information that's new and fresh for you, that has opened up your mind, opened up your eyes to some things. I know we didn't get to all the questions, and there were so many of them. So we will work through those questions and try to get answers out there to everyone. Thanks again for being here. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Erica and Melissa and Ashley out there. And we will see you again next month. But in the meanwhile, connect with us in all the ways we've said. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everyone.